Buongiorno ragazzi and welcome to a new Italian 101 video. Today's topic is very important. We're going to start studying a new tense for our verbs. That tense is known as Passato prossimo, and this is the first part of a two-part lesson. I'm going to start by reminding you of some very important facts regarding verbs. Verbs are, of course, those words we use to talk about actions. And there is a form of the verb that refers to the action in general, right? A form of the verb in which no one is actually doing the action. And that form is the infinitive, right? Infinitives in English are to play, to run, to study, right? No one's doing the action of playing into play, which is referring to the action in general. Same thing with to run and to study. Now, all the other forms of the verb, all the others that are not the infinitive, are known as the conjugated forms. Some conjugated forms in English of these same verbs. He plays. We run. They study. Why are these conjugated? Well, there's a subject, right? Someone is doing the action. So all forms in which someone is doing the action that the verb talks about are conjugated forms. And the only form that is not conjugated is the infinitive. Okay? Now, I want you to realize that conjugated forms of verbs have two components, right? One of them we have talked about a lot. Who does the action? And the technical grammatical term for that is the subject, right? Remember when we dealt with the subject and we figured out that there's a question that we can ask that tells us who the subject is, right? You ask who X is, right? And the answer to that would be the subject, right? So the subject is who does the action that the verb talks about. But there's another component that we have not talked about yet and is just as important as the subject when we're using verbs. That concept is when does the action happen? And the grammatical term for that, for the moment in time when the action of the verb takes place, or rather for the verbal form that signals when this happens, is the tense. For example, let me give you a few examples. They ran. Right? That is a verb. We have here a subject. Who runs? Of course, they. So they are the subject. But where's the tense? Well, if you think about it, ran, not they run, but they ran, that means that it happened in the past, right? If you say they ran to the store, it's not the same as they run to the store. If they run to the store, they're running right now. If they ran to the store, that happened at some point in the past. You're probably telling a story to someone about something that happened before, right? So they ran. The tense of the verb to run here is the past. Now another example with the same verb, we run. The subject here is we because we are the ones doing the running, right? And where's the tense? Well, if we say we run, when is that happening? Right now, right? So the tense is the present. And we can also refer to another point in time. If I say, for example, she will run, she is, of course, our subject because she's doing the running. But in fact, she's not doing it right now. She will do it in the future. So the tense here is the future. This is a very basic division. There are many subcategories here. But what I want you to understand first and foremost is that we have three basic tenses in both English and Italian. We have the past, we have the present, and we have the future. And the tense refers to the point in time in which the action of the verb is happening. Okay? So today we're going to talk about another tense, because if you think about it, for every verb that we have done so far during the semester, we have done the present, right? We have always been referring to actions that happen in the present. We have not yet learned to talk about the past or the future using verbs in Italian. So today we're going to start remedying that, okay? We are going to start with the past. In English, we have several tenses that we can use to talk about the past. Many, right? I want to talk about one today that is probably not the first one that comes to mind, but it is actually used sometimes. It is known as the past perfect. And I want to talk about this specific tense because in English, it uses two verbs and not just one. It uses always the verb to have and a special form of the verb that is known as a past participle. What do I mean by this? Hopefully this will become clearer when you look at some examples. I have loved. He has studied. They have moved. If you say I have loved, it's not the same as I love right now, right? I have loved you very much. That sounds like, ooh, something happened and all of a sudden I don't love you anymore, right? He has studied. He has studied for the test, right? It's not like right now he's studying, it's in the past, right? They've moved. They have moved from this place, so they went somewhere, right? All of these are in the past, and they are using two verbs, right? In the sentence I have loved, you have the verb to have and then the verb to love, a special form of the verb known as the past participle, that form that ends in D, loved. Same thing with the second example. He has studied, right? I have the verb to have, because has comes from the verb to have, is the correct conjugation for he of the verb to have, right? And then studied is the past participle of the verb to study. And the same thing for our third example. They have moved, right? Have is the correct conjugation for they of the verb to have, and moved is the past participle of to move, right? So I'm combining two verbal forms, the conjugated form of the verb to have and the past participle of the second verb to produce a verbal form that talks about the past. In Italian, we use a similar past and we use it a lot, okay? In fact, it's the form of the past that is used the most in Italian, and it's very easy to use. So this is another of the reasons why Italian tends to be one of the easiest of the Romance languages. If this were Spanish, we would have to learn the preterite, right? Which is much more complicated. So our past in Italian, the one we're going to study today, also has two parts. One, the verb to have, and another one, a past participle. But of course, it's not the verb to have, because that's in English, right? How do you say to have in Italian? I hope you remember this. Avere, right? Avere is to have. Of course, it's one of the two irregular verbs we have learned. It's the second we learned, right? Way back in the day when the semester was young. Let's remember how we conjugate this. It goes like this. Io ho. Tu hai. Lui lei ha. Noi abbiamo, voi avete, loro hanno. This is the first of the two verbal forms that we're going to use for our past, okay? And it is the only one that is going to be conjugated. What I mean is that if you know how to conjugate the verb avere, you know half already, or maybe even more than half of what you need to know for conjugating verbs in the past in Italian. Okay, so review this very closely, memorize it. This is the one that is going to change depending on the subject for our past. Okay, this is the one that you have to conjugate. Learn it if you have not learned it yet. Memorize it. All the forms of avere. So This is the first part of our two-part past, right? This is the first of our two verbal forms. What is the second verbal form? It is the equivalent of what we were using in English. It is the past participle. In Italian, of course, it's called Participio Passato. So we're going to learn how to construct the Participio Passato of Italian verbs. Attenzione, not all of them follow these rules, but a vast majority do. Okay? There are those participi passati that are not regular. They are irregular. They do not follow these rules. Okay? But these rules that I'm going to teach you right now apply to a vast majority of the verbs, and they're actually quite easy. It depends on what type of verb it is, right? And I hope you remember that we divide verbs in Italian depending on the ending of their infinitive. So we start with the are verbs like amare, right? How do we find the participio passato of amare? It is similar to how we conjugate it. We get rid of the ending of the last three letters of the infinitive, but now we don't insert the personal endings. We insert this. We insert ato. So the result is amato, right? That is our past participle of amare, amato. That's our participio passato di amare. What happens with ere verbs? Same thing. We get rid of three letters, but we do not insert ato, we insert uto. So the past participle of avere is avuto. What do these mean? It's the exact equivalent of the past participle in English. So amato means loved. Avuto means had, right? Avuto comes from avere, so it's had. Amato comes from amare, from to love, so it's loved. Now, how about ire verbs? Let's use capire. I like that one because it means to understand. We get rid of the last three letters, and we do not insert ato, we do not insert uto, we insert ito. So we have capito, right? Capito is the participio passato of capire, and it means understood. Okay? So, if you recall, I said that in order to conjugate these verbs in the past, in order to construct the past, we combined the verb avere with these past participles. So let me show you exactly how we do this. Let's start with capire. Here is our conjugation table of capire in the past, in the passato prossimo. Notice what is happening. I have two columns, right? The first column is just the verb avere. Io ho, tu hai, lui, lei ha, noi abbiamo, voi avete, loro hanno. And the second column is just the past participle that I told you just now how to find, right? So io ho capito, that's the past of capire for io. So what does that mean? That means I understood. Io ho capito, I understood, right? The action of the verb capire applied for the subject io in the past. Io ho capito, I understood. Tu hai capito, you understood. One person, you, right? Lui ha capito, he understood. Lei ha capito, she understood. Noi abbiamo capito, we understood. Voi avete capito, you guys have understood, or you guys understood. Loro hanno capito, they understood, right? And as usual, you can either say the subject or not. You can say just ho capito, right? Without saying io, because the form of the verb avere already tells you who is doing the action. So you can say abbiamo capito instead of noi abbiamo capito, okay? This is the past of capire. How about the past of avere? Same thing, but instead of capito, we use avuto. Io ho avuto, tu hai avuto, lui, lei ha avuto, noi abbiamo avuto, voi avete avuto, loro hanno avuto. How about amare? Same thing, but with amato. Io ho amato, tu hai amato, lui, lei ha amato, noi abbiamo amato, voi avete amato, loro hanno amato. And again, this form of the past is the one they use the most. They use it in everyday discourse all the time. So actually, conjugating verbs In Italian in the past is quite easy. There is one important exception that we're going to study next, because not all verbs use the verb avere to be conjugated in the past. But for now, we are going to focus on those which do use avere, which are the vast majority. Ok? Grazie ragazzi. A dopo.